The gunshot echoed across the dusty main street of Calistoga, California, sending a flock of startled birds into the sky as Ruby Steele felt the bullet whiz past her ear, missing by mere inches. The year was 1875, and she'd just become the most wanted woman in Napa County for a crime she didn't commit. "Stop right there, Miss Steele," Sheriff Buchanan's voice boomed through the morning air, his badge glinting in the harsh sunlight. "You've run far enough." Ruby's heart hammered against her ribs as she darted between buildings, her skirts clutched in white-knuckled hands. The murder accusation had come out of nowhere. She'd merely been in the wrong place at the wrong time, discovering the banker's body while delivering laundry to his office. Now, with planted evidence and whispers of a frame-up, she was running for her life. 3 days on the run had left her exhausted, hungry, and desperate. The abandoned mining shack at the edge of town had provided temporary shelter, but Sheriff Buchanan's posse was closing in. The man had a personal vendetta against her family dating back to when her father had exposed the sheriff's corrupt dealings years ago. As Ruby rounded the corner of the livery stable, she collided hard with a solid wall of muscle. Strong hands steadied her, and she found herself looking up into the most striking blue eyes she'd ever seen. "Whoa there," the stranger said, his voice deep and calm despite the commotion. His dark Stetson shadowed a face weathered by sun and wind, but kindness radiated from his expression. "You're in an awful hurry, miss. Please," Ruby gasped, hearing the thunder of approaching horses. "They're going to kill me. I didn't do it." The stranger assessed her quickly, then made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He pulled her into the shadows of the stable, pressing a finger to his lips as Sheriff Buchanan and 4 deputies galloped past. "Name's Ryder Wade," he whispered once the immediate danger had passed. "And it seems you've got yourself in quite a situation, miss." "Ruby Steele," she managed between ragged breaths. "Sheriff Buchanan is framing me for murder." Ryder's jaw tightened as recognition flickered in his eyes. "Buchanan, huh? That explains a lot." He peered cautiously around the corner of the building. "I've heard stories about him all the way from Denver to San Francisco, none of them good. He's going to hang me without a proper trial. Everyone knows he controls the judge." Tears threatened, but Ruby fought them back. She wouldn't break down, not now. Ryder's expression hardened with resolve. "Not if I have anything to say about it." He guided her deeper into the stable, toward a magnificent chestnut stallion. "This is Thunder. He's the fastest horse in 3 counties and our ticket out of here. Why would you help me?" "You don't even know me," Ruby questioned, even as she allowed him to boost her onto the horse. "Let's just say I've got my own history with men who abuse their power," Ryder replied cryptically, swinging up behind her. "Besides, I've never been one to ignore a lady in distress." They rode hard for hours, pushing Thunder to his limits as they headed into the rugged hills north of Calistoga. The landscape changed from vineyard-covered valleys to dense forests of redwood and pine. Only when they reached a secluded clearing near a bubbling stream did Ryder finally slow their pace. "We should be safe here for the night," he said, dismounting and helping Ruby down. Her legs nearly buckled beneath her, unused to such prolonged riding. Ryder caught her arm, steadying her with a gentle touch that sent an unexpected warmth through her exhausted body. "Thank you," she murmured, suddenly conscious of their proximity. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, speaking of both laughter and hardship. A thin scar traced his jawline, disappearing into the collar of his worn denim shirt. "Don't thank me yet," Ryder replied, tethering Thunder to a nearby tree. "We've got a long road ahead if we're going to clear your name." As night fell, Ryder built a small, smokeless fire and shared his provisions: jerky, hardtack, and a canteen of water. It wasn't much, but to Ruby, it tasted better than the finest meal at the Calistoga Hotel. "How did you end up on Buchanan's bad side?" Ryder asked as they sat side by side, the fire casting dancing shadows across their faces. Ruby sighed, the weight of recent events pressing down on her shoulders. "I found Mr. Donovan the banker dead in his office 3 days ago. I cleaned the businesses on Main Street, and when I arrived that morning, his door was unlocked. I found him shot through the heart." She shuddered at the memory. "Before I could even call for help, Buchanan appeared as if he'd been waiting. He found a handkerchief with my initials beside the body one I'd lost weeks ago, and my father's old revolver hidden in a drawer. A convenient setup, Ryder observed, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Exactly. My father exposed Buchanan's corruption years back, how he was taking bribes from the mining company to ignore safety violations. Papa died in a riding accident 6 months later. Her voice hardened. Nothing could be proven, but everyone knew. Ryder's face remained impassive, but his hands clenched into fists. And your mother, consumption took her last winter, Ruby said softly. I've been on my own since then. I'm sorry, Ryder offered, and the simple sincerity in his voice touched something deep within her. What about you? Ruby asked, eager to shift the conversation. What brings a man like you to Calistoga? A shadow crossed Ryder's face. I've been tracking someone, a man named Victor Hawkins, Buchanan's former deputy from his days in Nevada territory. You're a bounty hunter, Ruby felt a flicker of unease. Not exactly, Ryder's gaze fixed on the flames. Hawkins and Buchanan were responsible for burning my family's ranch in Nevada 5 years ago. My parents died in that fire. Ruby's hand instinctively reached for his. I'm so sorry. I was away, driving cattle to market, Ryder continued, his voice hollow with old pain. Came back to ashes and graves. Turns out my father had discovered their scheme, stealing cattle and selling them across state lines. When he threatened to expose them, they silenced him permanently. And now you're after revenge, Ruby concluded quietly. Ryder's eyes met hers. I'm after justice. Legal justice, if possible, but I won't let them escape punishment one way or another. They fell silent, each lost in memories of loss and injustice. After a while, Ruby's exhaustion overtook her, and she drifted to sleep beside the dying embers of their fire, Ryder's coat draped over her for warmth. She woke to the sound of birdsong and the smell of coffee brewing. Ryder sat nearby, whittling a small piece of wood with a pocket knife. Morning, he greeted, offering a tin cup of steaming coffee. We should reach my friend's cabin by nightfall. He'll give us shelter while we figure out our next move. Ruby accepted the cup gratefully. Your friend won't mind harboring a fugitive, a smile tugged at the corner of Ryder's mouth. Isaac Marshall was a Texas Ranger before he retired to these hills. He despises corrupt lawmen more than anyone I know. They set off after a brief breakfast, riding double on Thunder through increasingly rugged terrain. As they traveled, Ryder pointed out tracks and signs that would have been invisible to Ruby's untrained eye, evidence of deer, elk, and once, a mountain lion. You know a lot about the wilderness, Ruby observed as they forded a shallow stream. My father taught me to read the land like others read books, Ryder replied. Said a man who can survive in the wild is never truly beaten. My father taught me to read actual books, Ruby said with a small laugh, and to question everything, especially men with badges and big opinions. Ryder glanced back at her, a new appreciation in his gaze. Sounds like a wise man. He was. Ruby felt the familiar pang of loss. He believed education was as important for girls as for boys, taught me mathematics, literature, even a bit of law. The other townsfolk thought him eccentric. The world needs more eccentric men like that, Ryder commented, guiding Thunder up a steep incline. By late afternoon, dark clouds gathered overhead, and the first fat raindrops began to fall. Ruby shivered as the temperature dropped, and Ryder urged Thunder to a faster pace. Just as the rain turned into a downpour, a small cabin appeared through the trees, smoke curling from its chimney. Isaac's place, Ryder announced with relief. An older man with a silver-streaked beard greeted them at the door, shotgun in hand until he recognized Ryder. Brought company, I see, Isaac observed, lowering his weapon and ushering them inside. His keen eyes assessed Ruby. And trouble from the looks of it. She's been falsely accused by Sheriff Buchanan over in Calistoga, Ryder explained, helping Ruby remove her sodden shawl. Isaac's bushy eyebrows shot up. Elias Buchanan, that snake is still wearing a badge, you know him, Ruby asked, gratefully accepting a blanket from the older man, crossed paths with him in Nevada years back, Isaac confirmed, stoking the fire. Tried to bring him up on charges of evidence tampering and extortion, but he slipped away before we could make it stick. Disappeared east, last I heard. Well, he's been Calistoga's problem for the last 8 years, Ruby said bitterly. Over a hearty stew, Ruby recounted her story again while Isaac listened intently, asking occasional questions that revealed his investigative background. Sounds like Buchanan hasn't changed his methods, Isaac concluded when she finished. He always did prefer framing innocents to actual police work. The question is, why kill Donovan? Ryder mused. What was the banker involved in that warranted his murder? Ruby frowned, thinking back. Mr. Donovan had been acting strangely the last few weeks. Nervous, looking over his shoulder. I overheard him arguing with someone in his office the day before his death, something about ledgers and payments not matching. Isaac and Ryder exchanged significant looks. Money laundering, perhaps, Isaac suggested, or embezzlement. If Donovan was skimming from Buchanan's illegal dealings, Ryder let the thought hang in the air. That would give the sheriff motive, Ruby finished. But why frame me specifically? There must be easier targets. Opportunity combined with old grudges, Isaac reasoned. You discovered the body, and your family history with Buchanan made you a convenient scapegoat. They talked late into the night, developing theories and planning their next moves. Isaac offered them separate sleeping quarters, Ruby in the small bedroom and Ryder on a pallet by the fire. As Ruby settled under the warm quilts, a soft knock came at her door. Ryder stood there, something clutched in his hand. Thought you might want this, he said, offering a small wooden carving. It was a delicate rose, meticulously detailed despite being created with just a pocket knife. It's beautiful, Ruby whispered, turning the carving in her fingers. You made this today? Ryder nodded, a touch of color rising in his tan cheeks. My mother loved roses, said they reminded her that beauty can thrive even surrounded by thorns. His eyes met hers. Reminded me of you. Before Ruby could respond, he wished her good night and closed the door, leaving her staring at the wooden rose with a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the cabin's fire. The following morning brought clear skies and renewed determination. Over breakfast, Isaac laid out a plan. You can't just ride back into town guns blazing, he told Ryder. Buchanan would have Ruby swinging before sundown. Then what do you suggest? Ryder asked, frustration evident in his voice. Evidence, Isaac replied simply. We need proof of Buchanan's corruption and his connection to Donovan's murder. The bank ledgers, Ruby suggested. If Mr. Donovan was keeping records of illegal transactions, that would explain why Buchanan killed him. And how do we get those? Ryder questioned. The bank will be guarded, especially after a murder. Isaac's weathered face creased in a sly smile. I may be retired, but I still have contacts. One telegraph to my old partner in Sacramento could bring state authorities down on Buchanan, but only if we have evidence. I can get into the bank, Ruby volunteered. Both men stared at her. I have keys to most of the businesses in town for my cleaning work, and I know where Mr. Donovan kept his private records. Absolutely not, Ryder objected immediately. It's too dangerous. Do you have a better suggestion? Ruby challenged. I know that building better than anyone, and no one else can access those ledgers without breaking in, which would alert the sheriff. A tense silence fell as Ryder and Ruby locked eyes in a battle of wills. Finally, Isaac cleared his throat. The girl's right, he said reluctantly, but she can't go alone. I'll go with her, Ryder stated firmly. Isaac nodded. You'll need disguises and a diversion. They spent the day planning meticulously. Isaac provided clothing, a dress more befitting a wealthy woman for Ruby, and a businessman's suit for Ryder. They would pose as a married couple from San Francisco, interested in investing in Calistoga's growing wine industry. The bank closes at 4, Ruby explained, pinning her hair in a more sophisticated style. Mr. Donovan's office is in the back. His personal safe is behind a painting of Mount St. Helena. Do you know the combination? Isaac asked. Ruby nodded. I accidentally saw him open it once. He uses his wedding anniversary. July 18, 1854. What about Buchanan and his deputies? Ryder questioned, adjusting his unfamiliar tie. That's where I come in, Isaac said. I'll create a disturbance at the saloon enough to draw their attention, but not serious enough to shut down the town. As dusk approached, they prepared to depart. Isaac would ride ahead to establish himself at the saloon, while Ruby and Ryder would follow an hour later, approaching town from the East Road as visiting investors. Before they left, Isaac pulled Ryder aside for a private word, but Ruby overheard fragments of their conversation. "Not just about vengeance anymore, is it?" Isaac asked quietly. "I don't know what you mean," Ryder replied, but his eyes drifted to Ruby. "Just be careful," Isaac warned, heart and head both. The ride to town was tense with anticipation. They left Thunder at a small farm outside Calistoga, borrowing Isaac's mare and buggy to complete their wealthy couple disguise. "Are you afraid?" Ryder asked as the lights of Calistoga came into view. Ruby considered the question. "Yes," she admitted, but not enough to turn back. Ryder's hand covered hers briefly. "I won't let anything happen to you. And I won't let them hang you for interfering," she countered, squeezing his fingers. "So we'd better succeed." They entered town as night was falling, the streets illuminated by gas lamps. Ruby kept her head down, face partially hidden by an elaborate hat borrowed from Isaac's late wife. Ryder guided the buggy confidently, nodding to passers-by with the casual authority of a man accustomed to respect. They tethered the horse at a hitching post near the bank, timing their arrival just as most businesses were closing. From the direction of the Silver Dollar Saloon came the sounds of a commotion, Isaac's diversion beginning right on schedule. "Ready," Ryder murmured, offering his arm. Ruby took a deep breath and nodded, slipping her hand through his elbow. They walked purposefully to the bank's side entrance, where Ruby produced her key with steady fingers. Once inside, they moved swiftly through the darkened building to Donovan's office. Ruby located the painting and swung it aside to reveal the small wall safe. 7 right, 18 left, 54 right, she whispered, turning the dial with practiced precision. The safe door opened with a soft click. Inside were several ledgers and a stack of correspondence. Ruby grabbed everything, stuffing the papers into the satchel they'd brought. "That should do it," she whispered. "Now the sharp click of a revolver being cocked froze them both. "Well, well," came a familiar drawl from the doorway. "Miss Steele. I figured you might return to the scene of your crime." Sheriff Buchanan stood silhouetted against the dim light from the outer office, his gun aimed directly at Ruby's heart. Behind him loomed his newest deputy, a hulking man named Grimes. "And you brought a friend," Buchanan continued, eyes shifting to Ryder. "Remove your hat, sir. Let's see who's foolish enough to help a murderer." Ryder slowly removed his hat, revealing his face to the sheriff. A flicker of recognition crossed Buchanan's features, quickly masked. "Name's Ryder Wade," Ryder said evenly, "and the only criminal I see here wears a badge." Buchanan's smile never reached his cold eyes. "Trespassing, breaking and entering, aiding a fugitive, that's quite a list of charges, Mr. Wade. Enough to earn you a place right next to Miss Steele on the gallows. She didn't kill Donovan," Ryder stated firmly, "and I suspect these ledgers will prove who did." Something dangerous flashed across the sheriff's face. "Hand over that satchel, and perhaps I'll consider just locking you up instead of hanging you alongside her." "I don't think so," Ryder replied, subtly shifting to position himself between Ruby and the sheriff's gun. Buchanan's finger tightened on the trigger. Last chance. What happened next unfolded in mere seconds. The distant sound of a gunshot, part of Isaac's diversion, momentarily distracted Grimes. Ryder seized the opportunity, launching himself at Buchanan while shouting for Ruby to run. The two men crashed to the floor, wrestling for control of the gun. Ruby clutched the satchel but refused to flee, instead grabbing a heavy paperweight from Donovan's desk. When Grimes moved to help Buchanan, she brought it down hard on the deputy's head. He crumpled to the floor with a groan. Buchanan and Ryder continued their desperate struggle, rolling across the office floor, knocking over chairs and a small table. The sheriff was strong, but Ryder fought with the determination of a man with 5 years of vengeful purpose behind every blow. Finally, Ryder gained the upper hand, pinning Buchanan to the floor and wrenching the gun from his grasp. The sheriff's face contorted with rage as he recognized his defeat. "You think this changes anything?" Buchanan snarled. "I run this town. No one will believe the word of a drifter and a murderous woman over mine." "They might believe these," Ruby countered, pulling ledgers from the satchel. She quickly flipped through pages. Records of bribes, kickbacks from the mining company, money laundering through the bank, all with your name, amounts, and dates. Buchanan lunged for her, but Ryder slammed him back down. "It's over, Buchanan," Ryder said grimly. "For Donovan, for my parents in Nevada, for Ruby's father, it's all over." They bound and gagged both Buchanan and the still dazed Grimes, using curtain cords and handkerchiefs. The commotion at the saloon was growing louder, no longer just Isaac's planned diversion, but genuine chaos. "We need to get these ledgers to Isaac," Ryder said, helping Ruby to her feet. "He can take them to his contact in Sacramento." They slipped out the back door of the bank, keeping to shadows as they made their way toward the silver dollar. Before they could reach it, however, they encountered a scene of unexpected violence. A crowd had gathered outside the saloon, angry voices rising above the general din. Through gaps between onlookers, Ruby glimpsed Isaac on the ground, blood seeping from a wound in his shoulder. Standing over him was a man she didn't recognize, tall and lean, with a distinctive silver-handled gun. "Victor Hawkins," Ryder whispered, his face hardening with recognition. "Buchanan's old partner. The one who helped kill your family," Ruby gasped. Ryder nodded grimly, his hand moving to his own weapon. "Take the ledgers, get to the buggy and be ready to move." "I'm not leaving you," Ruby protested. "This isn't your fight." "It became my fight the moment you risked your life for me," she countered fiercely. "We do this together or not at all." Before Ryder could argue further, Hawkins spotted them. A slow, calculating smile spread across his face as he recognized Ryder. "Well, if it isn't young Wade," he called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Still chasing ghosts, boy." The crowd parted, murmurs spreading as Hawkins and Ryder faced each other across the dusty street. Isaac struggled to sit up, pressing a hand to his bleeding shoulder. "No ghosts, Hawkins," Ryder replied coldly. "Just murderers who haven't paid for their crimes." Hawkins laughed. "Still bitter about that little fire. Accidents happen, son." "It was no accident," Ryder's voice carried across the now silent street. "You and Buchanan murdered my parents to cover up your cattle rustling operation, just like you murdered banker Donovan to hide your current schemes." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Hawkins's smile faltered slightly. "Careful with your accusations, boy," he warned. "Sheriff Buchanan won't take kindly to such slander." "Buchanan is currently tied up at the bank," Ruby spoke up, stepping forward, "along with evidence of all your crimes." Hawkins's eyes narrowed as he assessed Ruby. "The murderer Buchanan's been hunting. You two make quite a pair of fugitives." "She's innocent," Ryder stated firmly, "and we can prove it with Donovan's ledgers showing your illegal operations." For the briefest moment, uncertainty flickered across Hawkins's face. Then, with lightning speed, he drew his silver-handled revolver. Ryder was faster. His gun cleared its holster in one fluid motion, and he fired before Hawkins could aim. The bullet struck Hawkins's right arm, causing his shot to go wild. The crowd scattered in panic as Hawkins stumbled backward, clutching his bleeding limb. "Drop it, Hawkins," Ryder commanded, advancing steadily. Instead, Hawkins raised his gun again with his left hand. Before he could fire, another shot rang out from Isaac's position on the ground. Hawkins fell, a look of shock frozen on his face as his life ebbed away in the dirt of Calistoga's Main Street. The following hours passed in a blur of activity. With Hawkins dead and Buchanan captured, the town's deputy mayor took charge. Isaac's contact in Sacramento was telegraphed immediately, and by dawn, state marshals had arrived to take custody of Buchanan and the evidence. Ruby sat on a bench outside the doctor's office where Isaac was having his shoulder tended. Ryder emerged from the building across the street, where he'd been giving his statement to the marshals. "How is he?" Ryder asked, sitting beside her. "Doctor says he'll recover," Ruby replied, exhaustion evident in her voice. "The bullet went clean through." Ryder nodded, relief visible on his face. "And you, how are you holding up?" Ruby managed a weary smile. "Better, now that I'm not about to be hanged." "The marshal says they've been building a case against Buchanan for months," Ryder explained. "These ledgers are exactly what they needed. Your name's been cleared officially." "Thanks to you," Ruby said softly. Ryder shook his head. "You saved yourself and me, for that matter." I came to Calistoga hunting vengeance, but you showed me the value of real justice. The first rays of morning sunlight crept over the distant mountains, painting Calistoga in golden light. Despite her exhaustion, Ruby had never seen anything more beautiful, perhaps because for the first time in days, she was viewing the world as a free woman. "What will you do now?" she asked Ryder, suddenly afraid of his answer. In the short time they'd known each other, he had become impossibly important to her. Ryder was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the sunrise. "I've been chasing ghosts for 5 years," he finally said. "Moving from town to town, never staying, never building anything lasting." Ruby's heart sank, anticipating his goodbye. "And now that it's over, you'll move on again." To her surprise, Ryder turned to face her, taking her hands in his. "Actually, I was thinking of staying. Calistoga seems like a good place to put down roots." His eyes searched hers. "If there's a reason to stay," Ruby's breath caught in her throat. "Is there a reason, I mean?" Ryder's smile was tentative, vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. "I think there could be, if a certain lady might be interested in getting to know a reformed vengeance seeker." Joy bubbled up inside her, unexpected and powerful. "I think she might," Ruby whispered. Very interested, in fact. The doctor's door opened, interrupting their moment. Isaac emerged, his arm in a sling, a knowing smile on his weathered face as he observed them. "Well," he drawled, "looks like I missed something important." Ryder laughed, the sound free and unburdened for the first time since Ruby had met him. "Just discussing future plans," he said, not releasing Ruby's hand. "Good," Isaac approved. "About time you looked forward instead of back, son." 2 days later, with Buchanan on his way to trial in Sacramento and the town settling back into normalcy, Ruby stood on the porch of her small house on the outskirts of Calistoga. The place had been closed up since her flight, but now, with Ryder's help, she was reclaiming it. "It's not much," she said apologetically as they carried in supplies. "But it's home." Ryder surveyed the modest 2-room cabin with appreciation. "It's perfect, solid construction, good location." "The roof leaks when it rains," Ruby admitted. "I can fix that," Ryder replied confidently. "And maybe add another room eventually." The casualness with which he spoke of future improvements warmed Ruby's heart. They worked together throughout the day, cleaning and repairing, falling into an easy rhythm that felt remarkably natural. As evening approached, Ryder built a fire in the small hearth while Ruby prepared a simple supper from their provisions. They ate at her father's old table, sharing stories and discovering the many ways their different lives had shaped similar values. "My father would have liked you," Ruby told him as they sat by the fire afterward. "He always said character mattered more than circumstances." "I wish I could have met him," Ryder replied sincerely. "He raised an extraordinary daughter." Ruby blushed at the compliment. "What about your parents?" "What were they like?" A shadow of old grief passed across Ryder's face, but it no longer seemed to consume him. "My father was the most honest man I've ever known, taught me that a man's word is his bond. My mother was gentle but strong, could quote Shakespeare while mending fences." He smiled at the memory. They loved each other deeply. "Even after 20 years of marriage, my father would bring her wildflowers for no reason at all." "That's beautiful," Ruby said softly. "It is," Ryder agreed. "I always hope to find that kind of love someday." Their eyes met across the firelight, an unspoken question hanging between them. "Ruby," Ryder began hesitantly, "I know we haven't known each other long, but these past days have felt like a lifetime." "I know what you mean," she whispered. He reached for her hand, his touch sending warmth spreading through her. "When Buchanan threatened to hang you, I said over my dead body without even thinking. I meant it then as a matter of justice, but now—" He paused, searching for words. "Now I can't imagine my life without you in it." Ruby's heart pounded as she leaned closer to him. "Then don't," she breathed. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. When they drew apart, Ruby saw in Ryder's eyes the same wonder she felt. "I've never believed in fate," Ryder confessed, "but meeting you makes me reconsider." Over the following weeks, Calistoga hummed with the news of Buchanan's crimes. The state investigation revealed a web of corruption extending beyond the town, implicating officials in neighboring counties. Throughout the upheaval, Ryder remained steadfastly by Ruby's side. helping her rebuild her laundry business and gradually repairing her small home. Isaac recovered from his wound and decided to stay in Calistoga, taking a room above the general store. He became a regular visitor to Ruby's cabin, often bringing wild game or fresh-caught fish to share over evening meals. "You two remind me of my Martha and me when we were young," he commented one evening as he observed Ryder and Ruby working together to clean up after dinner. "Got that same way of moving around each other, like you've been doing it for years." Ruby exchanged a smile with Ryder, knowing exactly what Isaac meant. From the beginning, they had fit together seamlessly, complementing each other's strengths and weaknesses. As summer turned to fall, Ryder took a job as foreman at the Thompson Vineyard north of town. The position came with a small cabin that he rarely used, preferring to spend his time with Ruby. Their courtship progressed naturally, without rush but with deepening certainty. On a crisp October evening, Ryder took Ruby for a ride to the hot springs that had made Calistoga famous. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks as they sat together on a blanket overlooking the steaming pools. "I have something for you," Ryder said, reaching into his pocket. He withdrew a small wooden box, intricately carved with roses similar to the one he'd given her that first night at Isaac's cabin. Ruby's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a delicate gold ring with a small pearl nestled at its center. "It was my mother's," Ryder explained, his voice husky with emotion. "My father gave it to her on their wedding day." "Ryder," Ruby whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. He took her hand, his gaze steady and sure. "Ruby Steele, when we met, I was a man consumed by the past. You helped me find a future worth living for." He took a deep breath. "I love you more than I thought possible. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Joy bubbled up inside her, spilling over in happy tears. "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "Yes, Ryder Wade, I will marry you." The ring slid perfectly onto her finger as though it had been made for her. Their kiss sealed the promise, tender and passionate all at once. News of their engagement spread quickly through Calistoga. The town that had once been ready to hang Ruby now embraced the couple's happiness, perhaps as a way of atoning for their earlier willingness to believe Buchanan's lies. Wedding preparations began in earnest with a date set for Christmas Eve. As the wedding approached, Ruby received an unexpected letter. It came from Sacramento, bearing the official seal of the governor's office. "What is it?" Ryder asked, seeing her surprised expression as she read. "It's about my father's death," Ruby explained, voice trembling slightly. "The state investigation into Buchanan's crimes uncovered evidence that my father's riding accident was deliberately staged." She looked up at Ryder, eyes shining with vindication. "They're officially recognizing that he was murdered by Buchanan, and they're awarding our family compensation from seized assets." Ryder wrapped his arms around her, understanding the complex emotions this news brought. "Your father got justice at last," he murmured into her hair. Ruby nodded against his chest. "I only wish he could be here for our wedding." "He'll be there in spirit," Ryder assured her. "Just like my parents." The compensation from the state was substantial, enough for Ruby and Ryder to purchase a small tract of land on the outskirts of town. Together, with Isaac's help, they began building a proper house, planning for their future together. Their wedding day dawned clear and cold, with a dusting of rare winter snow on the distant mountains. The small church in Calistoga was decorated with evergreen boughs and red berries, candles glowing in every window. Ruby wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully altered by the town seamstress. As she prepared in a side room of the church, Isaac knocked gently on the door. "May I come in?" He called. Ruby welcomed him with a smile. Isaac had become like a father to her in the months since their adventure, and his approval meant everything. "You look beautiful, girl," he said, his gruff voice softening with emotion. "Like an angel." "Thank you, Isaac," Ruby replied, adjusting her veil. "For everything. We wouldn't be here today if not for you." The old lawman cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the sentiment. "Actually, I came to give you something." He held out a small velvet pouch. "Been saving this for a special occasion." Inside was a delicate gold locket. When Ruby opened it, she found a tiny painted portrait of a handsome man with kind eyes and a beautiful woman with Ruby's same auburn hair. "My parents," she whispered in astonishment. "Where did you find this?" "State Marshal recovered it from Buchanan's personal effects," Isaac explained. "Seems the snake kept trophies from his victims. I thought you should have it for today so they can be with you." Tears threatened to ruin the cosmetics the town ladies had so carefully applied to Ruby's face. "Will you help me put it on?" she asked, voice thick with emotion. Isaac fastened the locket around her neck with surprising gentleness from his weathered hands. "One more thing," he said hesitantly. "I know I'm no replacement for your father, but I'd be honored to walk you down the aisle if you'll have me." Ruby's tears spilled over then. "Nothing would make me happier," she assured him, embracing the man who had become so dear to both her and Ryder. As the wedding march began and Ruby took Isaac's arm, she felt a profound sense of rightness. Walking toward Ryder, who stood tall and handsome at the altar, his eyes filled with love and wonder at the sight of her, Ruby knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where she was meant to be. "Who gives this woman in marriage?" the minister asked. "I do," Isaac responded proudly, placing Ruby's hand in Ryder's before taking his seat in the front pew. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, promises of love, respect, and partnership through whatever life might bring. When Ryder slipped the wedding band onto her finger to join her engagement ring, his hands were steady, but his voice broke slightly with emotion. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared. "You may kiss your bride." Their kiss was met with cheers and applause from the assembled townsfolk. As they turned to face their friends as Mr. and Mrs. Wade, Ruby felt her heart might burst with happiness. The celebration continued at the town hall, decorated festively for both Christmas and the wedding. Music, dancing, and abundant food created an atmosphere of joyful community. Ruby and Ryder moved among their guests, accepting congratulations and well wishes from people who had become true friends. Late in the evening, as the festivities continued around them, Ryder led Ruby outside for a moment of quiet. Snow had begun to fall, soft flakes drifting lazily from the dark sky. "Happy?" he asked, drawing her close against the chill. "Completely," Ruby answered, nestling into his embrace. "Though I still can't quite believe how much has changed since that day you found me running for my life." Ryder chuckled, the sound rumbling pleasantly against her cheek. "Best thing I ever did, helping a beautiful fugitive." Ruby tilted her head back to look at him. "When the sheriff threatened to hang me and you said over my dead body, did you have any idea what you were getting yourself into?" "Not a clue," Ryder admitted with a grin, "but I'd do it again in a heartbeat." Their life together began in the small cabin while their new home was being completed. Winter passed in a contented blur as they settled into married life, learning each other's habits and creating their own traditions. By spring, their house was finished, a sturdy 4-room structure with a wide porch and plenty of space for future additions. Ryder continued working at the Thompson Vineyard, quickly becoming indispensable to the operation. Ruby established a small school in town, teaching the children of Calistoga with the same passion for learning her father had instilled in her. Isaac was a constant presence in their lives, joining them for Sunday dinners and helping with projects around their property. When summer arrived, bringing with it the 1-year anniversary of Ryder and Ruby's first meeting, they celebrated with a picnic at the same hot springs where Ryder had proposed. "A lot can happen in a year," Ruby remarked, leaning against her husband's shoulder as they watched the sunset. "Indeed it can," Ryder agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Any regrets?" "Not a single one," Ruby assured him. She hesitated, then added with a smile, "Though I do have some news that might change our lives even more." Ryder pulled back slightly to look at her face, his expression curious. "What kind of news?" Ruby took his hand and placed it gently over her stomach. "The kind that means we'll need one of those extra rooms sooner than we thought." Understanding dawned in Ryder's eyes, followed by pure joy. "A baby, we're having a baby." Ruby nodded, laughing as Ryder swept her into a careful embrace, peppering her face with kisses. "When?" he asked, his hand returning reverently to her still flat abdomen. "Doctor says January," Ruby replied. A New Year's baby, perhaps. That night, as they lay together in their bed, Ryder's protective arm draped over her, Ruby reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. From falsely accused fugitive to respected teacher, from vengeance-seeking drifter to settled family man, they had transformed each other's lives in ways neither could have imagined. "What are you thinking about?" Ryder murmured sleepily against her hair. "About how sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best," Ruby answered honestly. "If Buchanan hadn't framed me for murder, we might never have met." Ryder tightened his arm around her. "I believe we would have found each other somehow. Some things are just meant to be." As their baby grew within her, Ruby bloomed. The townspeople of Calistoga, now fully aware of how they had been deceived by Buchanan, embraced the expectant mother with particular tenderness, as if making amends for their earlier willingness to condemn her. Isaac took on the role of expectant grandfather with surprising enthusiasm, crafting a beautiful wooden cradle that he installed in the nursery Ryder had built adjacent to their bedroom. "Never had children of my own," the former lawman explained gruffly when Ruby thanked him with tears in her eyes. "Martha and I always wanted them, but it wasn't in the cards for us." "Then our child will be blessed with the best honorary grandfather imaginable," Ruby assured him, kissing his weathered cheek. December brought news that Buchanan had been convicted on all charges, including the murders of Ruby's father and Ryder's parents. The former sheriff was sentenced to hang a fate he had tried to inflict on Ruby. Though the news brought a sense of closure, neither Ryder nor Ruby took pleasure in it. "Justice isn't about revenge," Ryder reflected as they discussed the news over dinner. "It's about setting things right as much as possible. And building something better from the ashes," Ruby added, her hand resting on her rounded belly. As Christmas approached and Ruby's due date drew near, Ryder became increasingly attentive, rarely letting his wife out of his sight. His protective instincts, always strong, had intensified with impending fatherhood. "You're hovering again," Ruby teased one evening as he insisted on carrying a basket of laundry that weighed next to nothing. "Can't help it," Ryder admitted sheepishly. "The thought of anything happening to either of you." Ruby set aside the dish she was drying and wrapped her arms around his waist. "Nothing's going to happen. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." "I know," Ryder sighed, resting his chin atop her head, "but not my woman. Not my child." On Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after their wedding, Ruby woke to the first pangs of labor. By midday, the local midwife had been summoned, and Isaac paced nervously on the porch while Ryder remained steadfastly by Ruby's side, holding her hand through each contraction. As the sun set on their anniversary, Ruby brought their son into the world, a healthy, robust boy with a shock of dark hair and eyes that promised to be as blue as his father's. "He's perfect," Ryder whispered in awe as the midwife placed the swaddled infant in Ruby's arms. "Absolutely perfect." "James Isaac Wade," Ruby said softly, looking up at her husband for approval. "After your father and our dear friend." Ryder's eyes glistened with tears as he nodded. "It's perfect. He's perfect. You're perfect." He leaned down to kiss her tenderly. "Thank you for our son, for our family." When Isaac was invited in to meet his namesake, the tough old lawman wiped away unashamed tears. "Never thought I'd live to see such a day," he admitted, carefully accepting the bundle Ruby offered him. "Hello, little James. Welcome to the world, son." The years that followed brought continued blessings. Ryder eventually purchased a partnership in the Thompson vineyard, securing their financial future. Ruby's school flourished, and she became known throughout Napa County for her progressive educational methods. James grew into a sturdy, curious boy with his father's adventurous spirit and his mother's quick mind. When he was 3, he welcomed a sister, Elizabeth Martha Wade, named for both grandmothers the children would never meet, but whose legacies lived on in their family's stories. Isaac remained a constant in their lives until his peaceful passing when James was 12 and Elizabeth 9. He left his modest savings to the Children's Education Fund and his cabin to the Wade family, who preserved it as a retreat and a memorial to the man who had helped bring them together. On warm summer evenings, Ryder and Ruby often sat together on their porch swing, watching their children play in the yard as the sun set over their vineyard. The horrors of their first meeting had faded into distant memory, replaced by years of love, partnership, and shared purpose. "Do you ever think about how close we came to never having all this?" Ruby asked one such evening, as Ryder's arm draped comfortably around her shoulders. Ryder considered the question, watching James teaching his younger sister how to properly throw a lasso. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But then, I remember what you taught me, that life isn't about what almost happened, but about what we build from what did happen." Ruby leaned her head against his shoulder, content in the knowledge that their story, which had begun with danger and desperation, had become something beautiful and enduring. A sheriff had once threatened to hang her, and a cowboy had defied him with the words, "Over my dead body." From that moment of crisis had blossomed a lifetime of love that neither could have imagined, but both had helped create, day by day, choice by choice, together. "I love you, Ryder Wade," Ruby murmured, watching the last rays of sunset gild their children in golden light. "Today and always." Ryder's kiss was as tender as the first they'd shared, yet deepened by years of commitment and shared joys and sorrows. "And I love you, Ruby Wade, more with each passing day." As twilight settled over their home, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, constant reminders that even the blackest night contains points of light, and that sometimes the greatest love stories begin in the most unlikely circumstances.